Hello and welcome back to the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. I'm in the studio with Jamie. Welcome back.
Again, I think is it last recording of the year?
It will be the last episode of the year. I'm proud to say that we've done a weekly episode every single week. We haven't missed a beat. We are going to miss the one on December 24th because nobody wants to tune in then. But yeah, we talk a lot about on the podcast of being consistent and consistently creating content. A lot of companies just don't create enough content. They don't have enough rhythm. They just create content when they've got the time, when they feel like it. Whereas this year, the start of 2025, we set out to get into a rhythm and to constantly create content. And a big piece of that is this podcast. And we've hit it. We've created a weekly podcast. Therefore, we've repurposed every single weekly podcast into newsletters, blogs, guides, LinkedIn posts. Some of them have been expanded into webinars, breakfast events. We've just been an absolute content machine this year.
SaaS Marketing Weekly.
SaaS Marketing Weekly as the podcast and newsletter brand has really helped us get into that rhythm and create a ton of top of funnel thought leadership content. And most of it gets pumped with LinkedIn ads to all the right people that we want to get it pumped out to. So we've really stuck to that this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no surprise that the business has had huge growth this year. We've basically had 100% growth this year, which is incredible. And we can thank the content and the rhythm that we've got into. So that's not even what this episode is about. I just sort of
So that next year,
I kind of freestyled into that, but it's true to kind of summarize. I think that this podcast and what it's achieved for the business this year has been incredible. It's like the seed of all of our written content, like video snippet content. It's the seed of our webinars, breakfast events. Like I said, there's like an annual summit coming up, and it's this podcast that it just that thought leadership gets created. And so we do this podcast, and then we just spit out all this other content, and it just supports the ads so much, which is actually what we're going to be talking about on the next episode, I think, that we're going to do. But today we're talking about the New Year's resolution mindset that people are in. So that New Year's resolution mindset is an extremely powerful, like, psychological feeling that people have that you as marketers or founders that are running the marketing function can really, really tap into. So probably the most famous, well-known one in the world is the gym.
Yeah.
So everybody knows that the gym gets a ton of new customers, old customers coming back in January. The gyms are absolutely packed in January. Obviously, Rocket SaaS, we don't target gyms. We're not going to give you advice on how to run gyms. I think they've kind of got that covered. But the same applies to your business, a SaaS platform selling into whatever micro niche you're selling into. The mindset is similar. People are going into the new year and they're thinking, I must solve that problem. I cannot face 2026 with that annoying problem lingering over me. I must get that problem sorted, whether it's marketing, sales, HR, sort of like cybersecurity issues, or your construction sites are still using WhatsApp to manage the site. Can't go into another project with that blooming communication channel we're currently using. If I see another Excel spreadsheet, I can't believe we're going to 2026 still using Excel spreadsheets. That mindset is very, very powerful, and people are feeling it right now at the end of the year, and they'll continue to feel it in January. So you can capitalize on that. You can create marketing campaigns, you can create marketing content, you can start hitting people with ads and newsletters and all those things, just literally calling out what they're probably feeling about the new year. So yeah, there's kind of a few different ways that you can look at it. The one I've just mentioned is talking about problems. Like, people don't want to go into the new year with that massive problem or that horrible software that they hate using. They have to switch software. But there's also goal setting as well. So a lot of people, hopefully most people have kind of set their targets and their goals already for 2026, but a lot of people right now are still trying to figure it out, or they're going into the new year concerned that they haven't really set a proper plan in terms of what they're going to do with their software or their budget. So that's another thing is if you create content talking about if you're looking to set goals, or if you're looking to allocate budget, or if you're looking to restructure your HR processes or whatever,
track against those goals.
Yeah, that sort of thing, like goal setting. There's also like benchmarking, so you can benchmark your business, how it's going into 2026 compared to other companies in the industry. There's also tools, particularly AI. Everybody's going into the new year going, what is the latest AI tool that's going to help my business? What are the tools that I'm not aware of? What's the new one that's coming? Oh, I've heard that ChatGPT ads is coming. How's that going to affect my industry? So, that's another very, very powerful piece of content that you can create that a lot of your target audience probably care about. I've already partially mentioned budget. You get very specific on this is how you set a budget for, this particular kind of sector that you're in. And it doesn't have to, this doesn't have to be about your product. It doesn't have to be completely bottom of the funnel. If you've listened to this podcast before, you'll know that we don't advocate just to talk about your product. You need to zoom out. You need to create top of funnel content. So don't worry if the content that you're creating is not 100% always about your products. For example, if you're teaching a company how to set a budget, that probably goes beyond just your tool. But the goal is that your tool kind of sits within that budget somewhere. And therefore you can spin the narrative to say, this is how you spend the whole budget. And by the way, here's your tech budget. This is where we come in. So you can see kind of how you can kind of spin your product into that whole narrative that you're trying to spin about this whole New Year's resolution mindset. So Jamie and I are going to do this. I think it should be a relatively quick episode. We said that before and it's not been quick, but we're going to try and do a relatively quick episode where we're going to just reel off some ideas for you. On content that you can create. I'll give you some examples of what we're doing here at Rocket SaaS as well. But yeah, we're going to rattle off some examples because hopefully, if you've not blocked off the next 3 weeks on holiday, which a lot of you probably haven't because you've run out of holiday days, you can spend this, relative downtime in the sort of mid to late December period, even the sort of maybe early Jan period, to actually take your time to actually create some nice content, get really stuck into a good 2026 campaign without the distractions of your emails and Slacks and constant meetings that happens throughout the rest of the year. This is it's quite a nice downtime that I personally like to get stuck into some big campaigns without getting too distracted. So yeah, we can sort of try and reel off a few different ideas now of different campaigns that you can do. I've given a few kind of high level categories and topics, but yeah, let's go through some examples of topics, and then we can also talk about how what channels do you use to get those topics in front of people, because there's a few different ways you can do it.
Yeah.
Although before you start creating content, really, you should try and do a little bit of market research if possible. So it may be a little bit too late in the year now, but you can get customer success if you're having an end of year call with your clients, just to have a little survey, just to ask them a few questions. Essentially be things like, what are your biggest challenges going into 2026? What are you worried about the most? What are the problems that you're looking to solve in 2026? What are your goals? Are you looking for any particular new features? Just basically ask them, and that will give you some really good, interesting insights as to what you should be creating content about. The other one, which is also a bit of a lead gen hack, which is one of my favorites, is to do a LinkedIn poll. So you would do this from whoever's got the best profile or multiple people in the business on LinkedIn, is more a personal brand post. You literally do a LinkedIn poll saying, what are your main goals going into 2026? Or what are your main challenges going into 2026? And then you just give them a few different options in the poll, and then people vote on it. And then that gives you a clue in terms of, this is what people care about the most. Therefore, I'm going to spin this answer into a campaign. It could be like an ebook or a webinar or a blog, anything like that. So that always start with market research where you can. And the reason why it's a bit of a lead gen hack is because polls get a lot of engagement. Like if you just did a normal post where you said, hey everyone, can you just tell me what is your challenges for 2026? You'll get a few comments. But if you do a poll, you'll get 10 times the amount of engagement, because people just love them polls. Well, people love clicking on the buttons, and because LinkedIn don't show you the results until you vote. So it just really encourages people to vote.
It's low commitment.
So if you've got, half decent sort of following on LinkedIn and you're, relatively active, it shouldn't be that hard to get 50 votes. If you've got a good profile, you should easily be able to get 100 votes. And those are potential leads in there. So when we do a poll like that, we get one of our virtual assistants to go through all the 100, 200 people that have voted on the poll, go onto their LinkedIn page, qualify them. Are they a potential good fit to work with us? And then I send them a DM. Hey, Chris, thanks for voting on my poll. I see one of your biggest challenges in 2026 is LinkedIn retargeting ads. We do that as a service. It'd be great to speak if you've got the budget to bring in an agency to support you. So suddenly you get 200 well, 200 people voting, depends how many people are qualified, but there's, say, 200 people voting, you'd expect at least sort of 30 or 40 people to be qualified. Suddenly you've got 20, 30 people that have shown a little minor sign of intent there that you can then go after, and it's not too salesy because they did engage with your post. So that starts with a little bit of a hack in terms of what people care about. But then, yeah, this episode isn't really about like lead gen hacks. It's more about what content you can create after it. So once they voted on that, that gives you a bit of a guiding light into what types of content that you can create. Okay, so let's get back to topic examples. So Jamie, tell us what type of topic examples can really work for this 2026 New Year's resolution mindset.
Yeah. So yeah, I do think I agree with like the principle. Like there is something very powerful about the psychology of someone coming into the new year, fresh kind of canvas for the year. You've got all the kind of normally kind of goals assigned, they're spelled out. There's priorities being set, budgets being realigned, etc. So I think that's the important bit to get into, and that's what you mentioned just there in terms of like the poll. And also just speaking to like customer success and potentially sales, like getting a bit of lay of the land about what are your buyers currently doing moving into new year, what are their priorities, is going to give you a really good basis to go off of. But I think it's just important doing that stuff to get into your buyer's world a little bit and just understand kind of, all right, what are the main challenges that they're trying to grapple with in the first thing in the new year? What is their absolute priority? What goals are they putting together to address those challenges? What's the plan that they're kind of putting together with those goals? And then what are they lacking? Things like technology tools, how they're budgeting, all of those things. That's kind of the key things they're going to be thinking about, particularly if you're targeting more kind of senior leadership and management, etc., which a lot of our listeners will be. So I think that's kind of stuff I'd be thinking about. And then that's kind of where you get into like the framing around setting yourself up for 2026 and building content around all of those pillars. All of a sudden, you've got a really relevant campaign that people are going to be receptive to because that's where their mindset's at. And then this is the point, okay, map those pillars out. Okay, what are we going to talk about? Budgets, goals, challenges, tracking, all that stuff. Right, we've got our themes, we know what we're talking about, and we can turn that into content. And we can start thinking about how we distribute it. So that's when I'd start thinking about other campaign types.
Yeah. Okay. So if we break it into those four things, so we'll start with the four main like topics. So problems, goals, budgets, and tools. So with problems, so to try and like reel off some examples of problems that you might that a company might have if you were targeting, if you had a software that was targeting HR leaders, one of the problems that they might have, for example, would be employee churn. Like in 2025, we had a bad issue with employee churn, which had knock-on effects in terms of additional training and upsetting our clients, etc. So we're gonna create some kind of a campaign that is around how to reduce employee churn in 2026, or maybe how to scale a business remotely in 2026. Like Rocket SaaS, we're growing really fast. So we're recruiting more people in London and we're recruiting more people overseas. And I've got a challenge at the moment to just if all these overseas people that join the company, I really want them to be embedded into the culture. Not really sure how to go about that if they're not, seeing us as much as the London team is seeing each other. So that's the sort of thing that I'd like to read about, because that's, as a leader, that's one of my problems, for example. So there's all sorts of ones in HR, or to pick another micro niche, construction SaaS, for example. We have a lot of construction SaaS clients here at Rocket SaaS. So a typical example might be communication channels. Like when we do projects, the team are just communicating on WhatsApp and text messages and phone calls, and it's just causing compliance issues. And just generally, the guys on site are just not communicating well enough, which is causing massive problems. We've had loads of complaints and delayed projects because of communication in 2025. We have to get that sorted. So we're going to create a campaign where it teaches construction companies how the teams on site or off site should be better communicating with each other. And by the way, our platform helps you do that kind of thing. So that'd be another problem example. Another example might be if you're targeting e-commerce businesses. Let's say retail, fashion, e-commerce businesses. Maybe in 2025, they had a massive issue with abandoned cart. So, abandoned carts were killing us. We lost 25% of potential revenue because of people just abandoning their cart. How do we fix that into 2026? That number has to improve. So you create a campaign. These are all the things that as a retail, fashion, e-commerce brand you can do to improve your abandoned cart rate in 2026. So those are some examples. There's obviously loads and loads and loads more. As I said at the beginning, try and get the customers to tell you what their problems are by using LinkedIn polls and speaking to your customers. But those are the sorts of things that people care about. And you as a marketer, you should know this stuff anyway. But the magic of just sprinkling on 2026, how you fix this in 2026, just really that does, like I said earlier, just plays into that mindset of what people care about consuming right now. So if you just kind of reframe, you may have even created this content already in 2025, but you just kind of repurpose it, sprinkle on that kind of New Year's resolution mindset, you can get a lot more engagement at this time of year because people know they have to solve that problem going into 2026. So that's the first category of problems. The next one being goals.
I think that connects back into it well as well. Like once you've kind of got the problem that you're focused on and you've got that kind of pillar, then it's a bit easier. Like for example, you was talking about like if it's HR software and you're targeting HR people, talking about employee churn, etc. Like if you then kind of connect that into, right, we've got our problem, this is what the campaign is going to be centered around, and fixing this problem in 2026, you can then move into how do you set the right goals to actually address that problem? What do the right goals look like? How do you kind of then make them actionable? How do you track those goals? And you create loads of content around that. So like, that's really like, it kind of leads on from the problem nicely. You got employee churn. Okay, right. How do I set the right goals to address this problem? And then you can create contents like templates, guides, walkthroughs, like templates and tracking sheets and stuff like that for goals and tracking your goals and stuff like that, KPIs. Loads of things come available, and they're all going to be thinking about this stuff because they need to have these resources available. Maybe they don't have the right, even just like simple things like I just mentioned, like templates, kind of how to track and stuff like that, might not even have that in place. So something like that, you can really engage a buyer in that moment. So I think that leads on really nicely from the problems.
Yeah, agreed. So yes, the other thing, people are going into 2026 wanting to hit goals. So for example, if I think about myself, so I'm a founder, CEO of an agency, I'm about to go into 2026. What are my goals? My biggest goal is to scale the agency. So if I was scrolling through my LinkedIn and I saw somebody or a company put a campaign out, whether it's a webinar or a guide or whatever, and it says the 2026 blueprint to double your marketing agency's revenue in 2026.
I'm downloading.
There's a very high chance I'm going to click on that. The very high chance I'm going to click on that because that is my goal. That is what I'm going to bed every night in December thinking about.
You're about to get 1 million DMs with that.
Yeah, now bring it all out, please. So I will consume that content, and then if I enjoy that content and it gives me some really good ideas and I think, yes, that was really, really helpful, I'm going to check out the person that created the content or the company that created the content, and oh, surprise, surprise, they also have a downloadable budget template that's maybe $20 to buy. I may well buy that. Oh, look, they also do a consultancy. It's actually an agency consultant that specializes in helping agency founders scale their business. I can see their pricing. It might be worth booking a call with this person. That's the funnel. That's the how it works. So yeah, again, if you can research, you can speak to your target audience, your customers, do the LinkedIn polls and whatever, and very similar to the problems, obviously, find out what people's goals are and create content to help them. And I recommend generally when it comes into goals, the step-by-step approach works well. You can't really have a goal, or certainly not a decent goal, without having multiple steps that you need to do to get there. So that's often a very powerful kind of like the hook, the headline, or just the way that you're structuring the campaign or the content. We'll get into different campaign types in a minute, but the 10 steps to set a budget for 2026.
And then there's like, kind of leading on from what you said earlier as well. Like, so if you're creating content around, okay, this is the problem. So we're creating content around the problem, campaign around the problem, create content around the goals, so helping people do that, tracking against it, stuff like that. Then we get into, okay, well, actually targeting, like again, the HR example, employee churn example, for example, you can get into what technology do you need? What technology do you already have? Have you evaluated tech stack for the year? Maybe you have the budget to change that. You can then start putting together guides and stuff to help with that if that's relevant for your business. And then also things like tech and the budget. So the budget's a big one. Like, how do you actually allocate and spend the budget wisely? Particularly across different sectors, that's going to be more and more relevant. But like, again, this is kind of where it all flows down from the problem. And all of a sudden you've just got across 4 different levels. You've got content that addresses the problem, which is going to be where their mind's at. Content that helps them set goals and kind of gives them tools to accomplish those goals. And then enables them like with information around the right tools, the right way to allocate their budget. And that's just kind of one way to approach it. But that's kind of like, I think 4 levels of really like helpful content and really meets them where they are and goes back to that kind of mindset we were talking about.
Yeah. So the budget one is a classic. Obviously, it depends who you're targeting. So I used myself as an example earlier as a CEO. So my goal is scaling revenue, among other things. But if you're targeting someone in, let's say, if you're targeting IT people, they care more about technology. People that work in IT often don't generally care too much about scaling the company's revenue. That's someone else's job. But if you're targeting an IT person, they probably care about what is the latest AI tech that's coming out to make my job easier, to make my dev teams perform faster. I want to keep my finger on the pulse of latest technology because that's my job. That's what I care about. That's what I'm passionate about. It's one of my goals, is to bring in new technology to make this an AI, automated workflow business in 2026. So yeah, creating, guides and webinars and various forms of content on this is what's coming in 2026. I use the example of, this is sort of moving away from IT people that would care too much about this, but I gave the example of, it's common knowledge that ChatGPT ads are coming in 2026. It's relatively common knowledge. I tell a lot of people, they go, what is it? Ow, oh God. So clearly a lot of people don't know. So therefore, creating content, if you know that your target audience use ChatGPT, for example, or they know that prospects find their business using ChatGPT, you could very easily create some sort of a campaign piece of content that says, this is how ChatGPT ads are going to affect your industry, and this is how you can capitalize.
I actually read that exact piece the other day from someone about ChatGPT ads. It's one of the best articles I've read in a long time.
Well, you clicked on it.
It got me. See, and I've been thinking about that for 2026 because it's going to be huge when it comes. So
yeah, exactly.
That's on my mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then just obviously just think about your ICP, your ideal customer profile. Who are you going after? I've given the example of IT people, founders. If you're targeting like salespeople, with your like sales tech, salespeople are kind of, a lot of them are worried right now because fewer people are answering the phone. Cold email seems to be working worse. People are getting made redundant. So salespeople need to know, like, how can I be better at my job? How can I use intent data, or how can I, what else should I be doing if people aren't answering the phone anymore? What other tools are there? So it's just, just obviously just playing into that mindset of these goals and problems that people have. And then the final category was the tech side of things, which we kind of already touched on, but that is definitely a classic in terms of people want to go into 2026 to improve their software, automate AI. Everyone's still talking about it at the moment, but there's so many people in your target audience group that just still don't really know what they're doing. They're kind of using ChatGPT in a basic format, but they're still not really implementing much tech, but they know they have to. Otherwise, by the time 2028 rolls around, they'll be out of business. Most people kind of realize that now, and they're worried or excited about AI, but a lot of them just don't know what's coming or how to use it. So creating some kind of a 2026, maybe even a little bit of scaremongering in there often does well in marketing, in terms of you should be checking out these tools. Everyone's talking about NAN and Lovable and all these different things, and just guiding people. And that is really, really helpful. Even if you're not saying you have to be a software procurement company to do that, but just make sure there is always a call to action to your software, your solution kind of woven in there towards the end. But what I'm trying to get across here is, it's content that your audience care about right now. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of your prospects aren't thinking about you and your software. They're thinking higher level. They're zooming out. They're more at the top of the funnel. So that's why this time of year is a great time to create content that people are going to consume, as long as we can nurture them down to the product. So those are sort of different examples of types of content that you can create. So now we can rattle through a few examples of actually how to
get out there, get the message out there.
Yeah. How do you get that content out there? So a few classics that spring to mind. The old ebook is a classic, a guide. You call it a white paper. We don't generally believe in gating those things, meaning putting them behind a form. The general demand gen philosophy is to just let people download it without filling out a form. That'll get the maximum amount of exposure and engagement, and then you can nurture people after that. The other one is a webinar. Don't really need to explain that, but that can often perform very well in January.
You need those like big pillar pieces, those big chunky ones, like a webinar or a guide like you just mentioned, because that's going to help you kind of then break it all out into smaller pieces.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the sort of centerpiece, if you like. Webinars are great because they have to be gated, so you do get the contact details. But when we do these things, we do both. Like, we do a webinar, then we repurpose it into an ebook, so you kind of got both angles covered. But anyway, the webinar, the ebook, they're two classics. Breakfast event is another good one, because again, going back to that mindset, people are hopefully going to have a couple of enjoyable 2-3 weeks at Christmas, downing tools, not thinking about work. They're coming into the new year refreshed. I think when you invite someone to a breakfast event or a webinar, or even trying to get them to download the guide, any other time in the year, so I'm too busy, got too much going on. But people come into that new year with, like, again, back to that kind of gym attitude of, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to
I'm going to fix employee churn. I'm going to fix it.
Going to attend that webinar. So again, just capitalizing on that while there is appetite for people to learn. So at Rocket SaaS, for example, we're doing a big breakfast event. We've rented out the Ivy in when is it? Late January, 22nd of Jan, something like that, I think. And we're hosting 25 SaaS marketers, SaaS founders, and the overall topic is how to nail demand generation in 2026. If you're going into 2026 with your marketing and you're not sure about how to just, scale with inbound marketing in 2026, come to our breakfast event. We'll present and we'll tell you how to do it. And we're just getting a huge number of signups and registrations for that event. By the way, it's rocket-saas.io/2026. You have to be in and around London because it's a physical event. So that's doing really well. It's performing so much better than our previous breakfast events that we've done at other times in the year. And I'm pretty sure it's partly because of the time of the year. People want to attend those things in January, and the hook that I've just sprinkled on 2026, because we've done these breakfast events before with similar titles without sprinkling 2026 on top. And people are just, really up for it because of, again, all that stuff I've said before about time of year and just mindset that people are in. So those are probably the big three classics: ebook, webinar, breakfast event. And then Jamie, I think you're going to talk now about how once you've got that kind of central campaign, if you want to call it that, you can then expand it into like multiple different little things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the good thing about kind of once you've picked a big pillar and you've got that kind of content mapped out somewhere, whether that's in, like you mentioned, a guide, or maybe it's been done on an event, maybe you film that event, maybe it's a webinar, etc. You got the content mapped out. So then you've got the ability to start kind of like just start distributing that into different channels in smaller pieces. So from our side, we'd be looking at, okay, let's turn all of this content, let's break it up into smaller chunks. So there's going to be lots in that. If we're talking about a big problem for a specific, like employee churn, going back to that example, let's break that into smaller chunks and let's start distributing that so it's getting filtered into all the different channels we're on throughout January, moving into February. So like, for example, I'll be thinking about breaking like the webinar up into clips. I'll be thinking about turning that into LinkedIn posts that we can then share with the team. That needs to be posted across all of your team that do post, that are willing to kind of post regularly, getting that shared across LinkedIn, trying to dominate the feed. I'd be thinking about actually probably trying to turn that bigger. Say, for example, you do a guide, turn it into smaller blog posts. So split that into 2 or 3 different blog posts that talk about the specific problem and topic in different, maybe like chapters or sections from that guide. But in general, that's kind of the approach I'd be taking, is take that big piece, break it up, start talking about the constituent parts within it, and start filtering that into your employees' profiles, into different content pieces across like video, YouTube, podcasts, etc., making email newsletters, getting it everywhere, and making sure you've got then essentially a consistent calendar from one piece for the whole month, talking about that exact theme, that 2026 start in 2026 to solve this problem. So you're consistently talking about the same problem in that framing, speaking to their mindset, and you're everywhere. That's kind of the goal. And then also from there, I think the next part really would be kind of thinking about, if you are running an ad platform, if you're running kind of LinkedIn ads, if you're running Meta ads, etc., I'd be thinking about how we take that and start distributing that at scale. So all those pieces I just mentioned, clips, shorter blogs, shorter podcasts like clips, shorter webinar clips, all that sort of stuff, get that onto the ad platforms and getting that front and center with your exact buyers also outside of kind of your own channels. That's kind of the way I'd be thinking about it.
Yeah, nice. So yeah, LinkedIn ads being the classic for most B2B SaaS companies. Yeah, and how to nail your marketing in 2026. Similar sort of messaging around that, just using that 2026 in the ads, and then those ads are leading to either there's a webinar that we've got coming up in Jan, there's this breakfast event that I mentioned, or it's just leading to one of our landing pages. So yeah, LinkedIn ads about, again, just that overall topic of 2026 and pumping out all of the content that Jamie mentioned. And you can run that all throughout the last week of December, and then even you can run that pretty much all through Jan. You probably stop talking about 2026 by the time you get into February, but the whole of Jan is a perfect time to kind of run these campaigns. So you certainly have time to spin something up, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and then just hopefully go into Jan getting lots of inbound leads. For a lot of businesses, January is the best performing month of the year. Q1 is certainly the best performing month that Rocket SaaS typically has, and I'm pretty sure it is partly because of like new budgets getting released at the start of the year and this whole mindset that I've talked about. So yeah, good luck. If you're not just stuffing your face with mince pies, get stuck into one of these campaigns, and hopefully you can go into 2026 just getting lots of inbound leads, and that'll just really inspire you just to start creating this content engine more consistently rather than just doing a big push at the start of the year. Imagine if you did that every single month and you pumped it all with ads. That's essentially what Rocket SaaS has done in 2025. Hence why we've had the best year we've ever had. We've pretty much doubled our growth. So I think that pretty much summarizes it. If you are not stuffing your face with mince pies for the next couple of weeks, you can have the time, hopefully, to get stuck into one of these campaigns, and it can really, really fuel your inbound lead gen growth in January. January is typically a very good month for inbound leads because of that new mindset that I've been talking about, and also budgets get released in January a lot of the time. So this is prime time for your business to be going into January, getting new deals. But if you're going to do that, you need to use the time now to create content, get some new ads running, and spit out these campaigns for January, so that you can just capitalize on that mindset. And hopefully it works and you get inbound leads, and it inspires you and leadership and whoever to not just create lots of great content and campaigns in the January period, to run it every single month. That's what we've done here at Rocket SaaS in 2025. And it's one of probably the main reason why the business has scaled so fast in 2025. So good luck. Hope those campaigns work out for you. And I should say, but if you are going into 2026 and you are worried about your marketing hasn't performed very well in 2025 and you must sort it, you have to have much, much better marketing if you are going to scale the business in 2026, or if you're a marketer and you need support. That's what Rocket SaaS are here to help you do. We're taking on lots of clients at the moment to basically run their whole 2026 go-to-market strategy. We're working on that at the moment for a lot of our clients. And we're going into 2026 running their LinkedIn ads, Google ads, optimizing their website, messaging, creating all the different types of campaigns that we just talked about today. And so we can essentially become your marketing support partner, or we can become your whole marketing department if you don't have one, from around $5,000 a month. So if you want to talk about that, whether it's now or in the new year, you know where to find us, rocket-saas.io, or you can pop me a message on LinkedIn. But if we don't speak until then, have a wonderful Christmas or holidays if you don't celebrate Christmas, and we will see you on the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast in 2026.